Growing up, I was often told, "You've got such a sweet voice. Oh my God, you light up that stage." And for a while, I thought, that should be enough, right? And then I landed my first ever live performance opportunity, performing with a full-fledged live band. Super exciting, right? I rehearsed, and finally, the night came, with those lights blazing down at me. This was my moment. There was a little problem, though. I just could not hear myself over those keyboards and drums and guitars. Oh my God, it felt like singing in the middle of a tornado. Are we in C sharp? Or are we in D sharp? Wait, are they even playing the same song that I'm singing? I kept edging my way closer to the guitarist to latch onto the right key because I felt so clueless and keyless. I stumbled and I fumbled, and by the end of this episode, my confidence was laying in pieces, somewhere between the kick drums and the bass guitars. I come from a medical family, a world where scales meant measuring weight and had absolutely nothing to do with singing. I had no formal training in music growing up. I had zero stage experience. Stage acoustics was a total mystery, and I didn't even know how to carry myself. And for a young girl who's putting herself out there for the first time, that night carved itself onto my brain cells like a tattoo you got on the spring break. Anytime I was in a high adrenaline moment after that, my brain would just rewind the tape to that disaster. And so I took a little sabbatical and some time off and away from live gigs and went back to the drawing board. Or in my case, it meant the training and the riyaz board. I started learning Indian classical music. Now, most people start their journey with classical music when they are kids. I started mine after having kids. At the time, I was working full-time for Microsoft, running a household, raising two beautiful little daughters, living the great American dream with a side of sleep deprivation. I became a lot more intentional about my idle hours, those that often get overlooked. I would do my vocal practices and keep playing with the variations of different notes during my commute to work and to kids' classes. And I must say, I am deeply grateful and hugely indebted to Seattle traffic for those extra pockets of practice time, because every single car ride for me ended up becoming a concert. Some days, I was spectacular. Some other times, maybe not so much. But little by little, within the confines of my car, I started to rediscover the artist within me. So next time you see anyone belting out a tune in their car, please do not mock them, for this very well could be their mobile rehearsal studio. Time went by. Almost 5 years later, a random new opportunity came and knocked at my door. Microsoft, my employer at that time, was looking for homegrown talent for a cultural event, and I was invited to perform as part of it. That's where I ended up meeting a few more like-minded people, and we formed a band. What followed from that point on was hundreds of rehearsals, many more live concerts, content creation, and a sudden influx of tens of thousands of followers on my social media pages. And yet, I still doubted myself. I mean, sure, I looked confident on the surface, and I got really good at faking it. But the reality is, I was still engulfed in the disaster of that first performance. Nonetheless, I kept pushing myself through. Like they say, feel the fear, but do it anyway. And then I saw this competition, an international music competition being held in Chicago with some prominent judges. That was in 2019. A few things had shifted inside of me by that time. I was receiving a lot of positive feedback and validation from all my followers and audience on the social media pages. And that virtual pat on the back helped me relax and not be as consumed by fear this time. And that meant I was able to deliver a solid performance and made it to some of the final rounds. Now, I didn't win the competition, but I did catch the eye of one of the judges who happens to be a legendary Bollywood music director, Mr. Jatin Pandit, who then invited me to tour with him in his US tour. Now, this really got me thinking. Was that initial disaster really as catastrophic as it felt at that time? Or was it just a blip? Maybe I was too zoomed in. Because if you zoom out and if you visualize your life like a scattergraph of events, all of those moments of doubt, of failure, of embarrassment, they all end up looking like tiny dots and little specks on that scattergraph with millions of other dots on it. There were two other things I realized through that Chicago competition. One, anytime I put myself out there, I always ended up winning something. It may not be the thing I went for. And two, even if I succeeded and won the prize that I went for, that soon became a past glory too. Even the most glorious moments became a dot, a point in time. That kept me grounded. The only choice I had was to keep pushing forward. Now, fast forward all the way to 2024. I made it to the top 10 finalists of a major vocal competition and was invited to perform in Mumbai, the heart of Bollywood and the mainstream Indian music industry. I was so excited to go ahead and give my shot at the big Bollywood leagues. A few things were different at this time. One, I had a lot more experience as an artist. I had evolved as an artist. I had a lot more experience having opened and hosted multiple mainstream events, even those with Bollywood icons. And second, I had already had my perspective shift that no matter what happens, it's just a blip. However, just as I was leaving for the competition, I was emotionally exhausted because right before leaving, my most beloved aunt, who I considered my godmother, passed away. And I was physically exhausted, having traveled across 3 continents. When I finally got on that stage, I was struck by a sudden paralysis. My breath went completely out of whack, out of control. For a heartbeat, I froze on that stage, caught in that spotlight, wrestling with my vocal cords that were actively betraying me. And then somehow, I got myself together and I finished my song. I was so disappointed. I flew across 7 oceans for 3 days to get 3 minutes on that stage. How could I mess up such a big moment? If the pressure earlier in that first performance came from being raw and unprepared, the pressure this time came from my own need for perfection. I set the bar really high for myself, and I fell short. Trust me, self-doubt needs 0 excuse to throw a party in your brain. As I was standing on that stage beating myself up, one of the key judges, who is a very renowned music maestro, Mr. Sonu Nigam, he said, "You sang that so beautifully, with so many intricate nuances, and you've got a gorgeous voice." I said, "Thank you, but I definitely knew I could have done so much better." I came back home disheartened. What a waste of a big opportunity. A few days later, the phone rings. The organizers of that competition are starting a new music label with mainstream artists. "Hey, Sonia, one of our artists has picked your voice for their brand new single." I said, "Okay, and who's that?" They said, "Shaan." "Shaan? Are you kidding me? Out of nowhere, Shaan, that's like telling me, hey, Ed Sheeran heard you in the shower and wants to do a duet with you. And that moment, ladies and gentlemen, really sealed the deal for me with a few key takeaways. One, success does not always arrive in the package that you expect it to come in. Two, there is immense power in just showing up. Showing up is 80% of the work. And last but not the least, it's all just a blip. What if every embarrassment, every failure, every moment you thought that was going to break you is just a blip? And yes, some dots are going to be bigger than the rest. Some blips are going to be way more significant compared to the others. But the fact of the matter remains that when you're in the moment, you are so zoomed in that the dot gets massive and monstrous, and it ends up taking over your entire field of vision, and you end up giving it a very disproportionate response. And that can stop you from trying. I'm going to leave you all with a little visualization exercise. This is something that helps me out anytime I am stuck in this mindset and need to snap myself out. I like to call this my perspective shifter snap out tool. I'd like to request everybody here in the audience to please close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Exhale. Keeping your eyes closed, I want you to imagine the thing that you are most passionate about and yet most afraid of doing because you're too scared to fail. And now, I want you to really imagine yourself doing it. Whatever your version of that nerve-wracking, high adrenaline moment, whether it is an interview that you're putting off, or a competition, a performance, or who knows, maybe it's asking someone out on a date. In that fear-engulfed moment, let's name it the zoomed-in moment, I want you to picture your fear like that giant scary dot that I showed earlier. And that's blocking your entire field of vision. And now, as you relax your shoulders, visualize that dot drifting farther and farther away, shrinking smaller and smaller until it's just one tiny dot on that messy and beautiful scattergraph of your life with millions of other dots on it. Feel it in the right context and significance where it rightfully belongs. Now please open your eyes. I did not let the blip stop me. What is stopping you? Thank you so much.